All right, let's get right into this explainer and unpack the miracle, the tactics, and the terror behind the 1954 World Cup upset. We're looking at a story that combines some absolutely incredible on-pitch tactical innovations with some truly dark off-pitch political realities. Because you see, this isn't just a story about a football match. It's a deep dive into how preparation, ideology, and state terror all collided in the middle of the 20th century.
So, we're kicking off this explainer with a genuine historical mystery. How in the world did the seemingly invincible Hungarian national team, widely considered the most talented squad ever assembled up to that point, lose the 1954 World Cup Final? To really grasp the magnitude of this upset, you have to understand the sheer invincibility of the team everyone called the Magical Magyars.
I mean, just look at the sheer scale of Hungary's dominance here. 31 matches unbeaten. They were an absolute superpower, carrying a 4-year unbeaten streak right into the final. They were literally revolutionizing the sport. In just 5 matches of this very tournament, they netted an unbelievable 27 goals. That's a single tournament team record that still stands today. They'd even demolished their final opponents, West Germany, 8-3 in the group stages. So they weren't just expected to win, their victory was considered an absolute, undeniable certainty.
Part 1. The Miracle of Bern. Let's set the scene.
Picture this. It's a rain-soaked pitch in Switzerland on July 4th, 1954, and Hungary looks absolutely set to confirm their supremacy early on. Within the first 8 minutes of the final, legendary forwards Ferenc Puskás and Zoltán Csibor had already struck, giving Hungary a lightning-fast 2-0 lead. It's a wrap, right? Well, no. Instead of a coronation, West Germany remarkably rallies. Max Morlock pulls one back, Helmut Rahn equalizes, and then, late in the second half, Rahn fires a composed, left-footed strike to secure a miraculous 3-2 comeback victory.
So how on earth did it happen? Well, observers often point to a few superficial factors for the upset. First off, you had the torrential rain, famously known as Fritz-Walter weather after the German captain, which basically turned the pitch into heavy mud, completely ruining Hungary's intricate, short-passing game. Meanwhile, the West Germans had this massive technological edge. Innovative football boots with screw-in studs that gave them superior traction in the mud. Combine that with manager Sepp Herberger's intense focus on physical conditioning, and the Germans simply had the stamina to outlast the exhausted Hungarians.
Which brings us to part 2. Pragmatism defeats pure attack.
Because there is way more to this than just muddy boots. This matchup was a stark clash of ideologies between Gustav Seebass's fluid, attacking machine and Sepp Herberger's highly disciplined, man-marking pragmatism. Hungary used a revolutionary setup where their center forward, Nandor Hajdguti, operated as a false 9. He'd drop deep into the midfield to pull defenders out of position and just create chaos. Sepp Herberger, on the other hand, knew that playing traditional defense against this would be absolute suicide.
So what does Herberger do? He crafts an absolute masterstroke. He assigns his center half, Werner Liebrich, to relentlessly shadow Hungary's deep-lying playmaker literally everywhere he went. By neutralizing Hajdguti, West Germany effectively broke the Hungarian midfield engine. Puskás and Kossis were completely starved of the ball, forcing them to drop deeper and wider into non-threatening areas. West Germany just absorbed the pressure and hit back with lightning-fast counterattacks.
Now, let's look at part 3, a fatal defensive flaw.
Actually, scratch that. Tactics alone don't explain the whole picture here. I mean, think about it. If you score dozens of goals a tournament, you should still be able to outscore your opponents, right? The crucial point is that despite their devastating attack, their defense was uniquely vulnerable. During their run across Europe, it wasn't uncommon for Hungary to win games 8-2 or 6-3. Their defense was far from impenetrable, and that ultimately allowed West Germany to score 3 times in the final.
And the reason for this vulnerability is honestly chilling. Hungary was missing their impeccable, title-winning defensive maestro, Sándor Szűcs. This left a gaping hole in their backline. Szűcs was an absolute rock, an elegant reader of the game with a remarkable leap. By 1954, he should have been the 32-year-old veteran anchoring that World Cup defense. Instead, he was replaced by a 26-year-old Gyula Laurent. And while Laurent was definitely talented, he simply wasn't on Szűcs's level.
This takes us to the darkest layer of this explainer, Part 4, Murder by the State. To figure out why Szűcs was missing, we actually have to leave the football pitch for a minute and enter the oppressive atmosphere of 1950s communist Hungary. Academic research highlights how the Hungarian state deeply intertwined sport with national identity.
After the devastating territorial losses of the post-World War I era and eventually transitioning into a Soviet-aligned one-party state, the government aggressively used elite sporting success to project strength and legitimize their regime. These players weren't just athletes, they were literal state assets.
And this brings us to a concept historians call necropolitics. It sounds intense, and it absolutely is. The government utilized necropolitics, wielding the ultimate power over life and death to protect their ideology and eliminate perceived threats. To the state, maintaining absolute control over their star athletes was paramount. Any deviation, any attempt at individual freedom was seen as an existential threat to the state's entire narrative.
Let's track how this played out in real life. The human cost began to unfold in 1948, when Sandor Suits fell in love and had an affair with a popular jazz singer named Jerzy Kovacs. The state, taking a deeply conservative view of the family unit, sent Suits a chilling warning to end the relationship or else see his football career completely destroyed. Refusing to be controlled, the couple desperately attempted to flee to Italy in March 1951 to start a new life.
But the escape was a devastating setup. A total trap orchestrated by the notorious secret police, the AVH. The smuggler they hired for a fortune, he was actually an undercover agent. They were intercepted at a checkpoint and taken straight to the infamous House of Terror. And because football clubs were technically controlled by the police, Suits was tried in a military show trial as a commissioned lieutenant caught red-handed with his police-issued weapon.
Despite desperate petitions for mercy from his legendary teammates like Ferenc Puskás, the state showed absolutely no leniency. At just 29 years old, Sandor Suits was executed by hanging on June 4, 1951. He became the only footballer murdered by the Hungarian state. And the wildest part? This fact was kept completely secret from his lover in prison and from the general public for decades.
Let's move to Part 5, the weight of legacy.
You see, this horrific act cast a long, dark shadow over the 1954 World Cup. This execution was a highly calculated act of terror, meant to trap the rest of the Golden Team inside the country. And for a few years, it really worked. The state was absolutely terrified that their prized propaganda tools would defect to the West. By making a brutal example out of their best defender, they instilled a paralyzing fear into the rest of the squad. So, we are left with this massive, haunting realization. The state's brutal elimination of their finest defender directly sabotaged their own World Cup dreams. If Sandor Suits had been anchoring that defense against West Germany, dealing with those counterattacks and providing that solid foundation he was so famous for, the Miracle of Bern might never have happened at all. The state's obsession with control ultimately cost them the exact sporting glory they so desperately craved.
The full truth of this tragedy wasn't even uncovered until after the fall of communism in Hungary in 1989. That's when declassified documents finally allowed historians and researchers to piece together the real reasons behind the scenes. Suits was posthumously honored, his sentence revoked, but his story serves as a really stark reminder of the immense human cost that so often gets buried beneath sporting statistics.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something to chew on. While the specific tragedy of the 1954 Hungarian team is firmly in the past, how often are the games we watch today still being shaped by invisible political forces off the pitch? When governments invest heavily in sports to project power on the global stage, we really have to ask ourselves what unseen pressures those athletes are carrying. Thanks so much for joining me, and always remember to question the history behind the headlines.